Everyone, we're here again with another episode of Around the Octagon. We got the full crew here today. We're going to break down some recent news, talk about some hypotheticals, and just talk some fights that we were just talking about, fellas. I'm excited. How about you, boys?
Ready to get after it, baby. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit, and I think it's only fitting to start with the most recent fights, and we'll touch on Michael Morales and I guess his performance against Gilbert Burns. In my opinion, he looked absolutely phenomenal, and it really would be in everyone's opinion just based on how that fight went. The guy just looked absolutely massive as a welterweight. I know he's a little bit taller than Gilbert Burns, a couple inches, but he just looked 4 or 5 inches taller than Gilbert Burns, way bigger, and he's only 25. Fended off the takedowns. So I mean, after putting on an impressive performance like that, where does Michael Morales go next? Son, I know you were watching that fight. What did you think about his performance, and where does he go?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously did great. I made the mistake of putting money on Gilbert Burns, so I was pretty upset watching that. I pretty much turned my TV off as soon as he got KO'd. Um, but it's undeniable how good he is. I mean, the one thing that really stuck out to me from that fight, and really this was more before the fight, is like you mentioned his size. The day after he weighed in, he did weigh-ins. The day of the fight, he posted a picture on the scales. I think he was 196, 198, floating close to that 200 pounds mark. That's one day after weigh-in. So he gained like 20 pounds overnight. Um, and that, like, as soon as I saw that, really reminded me of Alex Pereira and how he, would weigh in like crazy amounts of pounds heavier on the day of the fight night as opposed to the weigh-in. So, anybody that can kind of weight bully like that automatically has an advantage. Especially in the welterweight division, that's kind of like a middle ground. Nobody's too small and nobody's too big. If you get a guy like Michel Moraes, that's just like can put on so much weight and is so tall and so lengthy. That's just a huge advantage there in that division. Obviously, his performance spoke for itself. He did great. His striking is really fucking good. Like I said, I was riding Burns, so I wasn't actually cheering for him, but it's undeniable when you watch that fight how well that went. So I think he posed a serious threat to that championship belt. Obviously, that division's super exciting right now. There's just a lot of crazy shit going on, a lot of movement going on. So excited to see another contender and a legit contender. Not just speculation like we've seen with some guys in the past. This guy's legit. He's beat legit guys. He obviously just beat a pretty chiseled Gilbert Burns. I thought he was in really good shape going into this fight. And then just put the pause on him. So really good outlook on this guy. I'm excited where he's going.
So Ryan, Luke, I'll pose a question to you guys. So assuming you have a young 25 upcoming fighter who just took out Gilbert Burns, he just moved up 4 spots in the rankings to number 8. You're thinking you're going to look up, right? 25 years old. Why would you really be looking down in the rankings? But who do you move up to? Because you have Joaquin Buckley, who's booked. You have Ian Machado Gary, who's not going to fight down to Morales. You have Usman, who's booked. You have Leon Edwards, who maybe they'll throw Leon Edwards out there. And then Rachmanov, Brady, that's just too high up in the rankings. So where does he go next? Ryan, I'll let you go first.
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I think at 25 years old, you're in the situation where like your game's still improving. There's a lot to improve. You're probably like 5, 6, 7 years away from your prime. Take, take a little while off. Take a good 7, 8, 9 months off until we see you again. Wait for something to maybe open up. Just improve on like every aspect of your game. I mean, for Mirage, the world, the sky's the limit here. And given, I probably think to argue now that welterweight might be the most stacked division in the UFC, just in terms of how young all of these prospects are and how good they are. And JDM just got the bit off the law, and he's 28. Leon Edwards is still like only 33, just previous champ. Shavkat, same deal. He's like, I think he just hit 30, maybe 31. Sean Brady, same deal. Like all these guys are young and they're all so skilled. And like I know like the talk of the town's always been lightweight being the most skilled division, but all these guys are aging, like all the top, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway is now 33. That's not old per se, but Charles Oliveira, 36. The only real like young contender in that class now for me that comes to mind are like Paddy Pimblett, Ilia Topuria. While you look at welterweight and it's just stacked with all these young killers. But for Michael Moraes, to get back to the point, I would say wait, maybe see the outcome of the Usman-Buckley fight. I'm sure like after that, one of those guys, the loser of that's going to need a good amount of time off, and they'll still be up there in the rankings, above him. You could do that. Sean Brady, I know he's gunning for a title shot. I think he will only fight Shavkat, or for the belt. And also now with the UFC or that weight class being in limbo because JDM is fighting Makhachev for the belt next, you really just have to wait and see where things go. So for me, I think it's just a smart move for Moraes is to wait, maybe fight one more time in November, wait out for the end of the year. But don't rush it. They're only 25 years old. A lot more to learn and a lot more experience to gain.
Yeah, right. I'll piggyback off you. Looking at the rankings here, I completely agree with you. I think although this division is extremely exciting right now, we just hit on all those bases. But yeah, it is kind of stagnant right now. We're kind of waiting with Islam in that title. And then we kind of have like 4 guys, maybe 3 guys that could get the next title and no one would be mad about it. So just looking at this list, if there's a clean list, I would love that Buckley fight for him. I think they have great styles to match up against each other. Obviously, Buckley's booked. And it doesn't make sense for a young guy to really go down or look down in the rankings or create that popular fight, so to say, and sell tickets because you're not going to, be headlining a pay-per-view at 25 or ranked 8. But I'm looking down this list, man, and I know, one of our fan favorites here, Michael Morales versus Carlos Prates, ranked 13. I know they probably won't do it. 2 young prospects that they don't really want to lose one. But that would be a banger. I would like to see that fight. I think the most likely outcome is Morales waits. I think Prates kind of waits too, to kind of see where the dust settles at the top 5 of that division, top 6 of that division. Because then you have Gary at 6. Like you could say Morales against Gary, but if I'm Ian Gary, I'm not taking that fight. I've taken 3 short notice fights against all the guys, have gone the distance or won those fights. I'm not going to do it again for the UFC without them paying my respects. So I think you guys hit on the head. Let's wait and see the dust settle, and then we'll see how this division maps out. But it's a great time to be a welterweight fan.
Yeah, I mean, let me just hop in here real quick. Can we just appreciate, how well, you guys both everybody touched on it, but how well-rounded and how, stacked the welterweight division is. I remember, 2-3 years ago or around COVID time, some people were calling for the welterweight division to be completely taken out, drop it down to 65 and just a catch weight. Because there was just not much movement. I remember when, even when you had Usman up at champ, it didn't really move much. There wasn't a lot of, crazy prospects coming in. In a short time, we got a lot of really good prospects. So it's exciting to see that the welterweight division is going to survive, through those few years of hard times that it did see. But it's good to see. And now I think we can all agree it's the best division in the UFC right now.
Yeah, son. Isn't it crazy that like when we get a champion that's so dominant, the fans are like, get rid of the division. Like
exactly.
Appreciate like Pantoja too. I know it's flyweight and it's been going on forever, but it's like he's dominating. Everyone's just like, we're sick of it. Get rid of it.
I could see though the argument during the Usman's championship just because you look at like his resume as champion. It's a great resume, but it's Covington. You see him fight Covington twice, then Jorge Masvidal twice, then Gilbert Burns, and then he finally fought Dan Edwards and lost. And then before then, you had Tyron Woodley same thing. He fought Stephen Wonderboy twice, then Darren Till, and then I'm pretty sure he fought.
Let's be honest, too. Usman got 2 defenses against Jorge Masvidal, who was never a championship caliber fighter. Sorry, Leo, if you're listening or care to tune in, but Masvidal is just not a championship caliber guy, and that's 2 of the defenses. But I'm not going to take anything away from Kamaru Usman's greatness and how good he was, because I truly believe he was that dominant regardless of the competition and the strength of it. But I just wanted to go back to Morales for a second here. What if the UFC was just like, you know what? Let's give him a fight night main event against Colby Covington and get rid of Colby. He can just beat the brakes off Colby, because the way he fended off like Gilbert Burns takedowns and he wouldn't stay on the ground and just how big he looked, he would just TKO him in probably 2 rounds. So, they could probably make a fight night main event out of that if they really wanted to, but I don't really see it happening. I don't really see him fighting down, but who knows?
I think Colby's got enough haters that a shit ton of people. Like that could get as many views as a PPV just to see him get the shit kicked out of him. Like
No, like,
enough people hate
it would
him
be
to where people would hate watch that fight. Like it's no ranking, sense at all, and no sense in them fighting. But it's just get this guy in there and beat the shit out of him.
it's definitely a big enough fight to make it a legitimate like destination fight night where you have an actual crowd and whatnot. So I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
who knows? But moving on, at that fight night, the UFC announced the signing of Patchy Mix, a big bantamweight prospect who is still in his prime. So Luke, Ryan, San, I don't know which one of you guys wants to talk on this one first, but he's debuting against Mario Bautista. I want to hear thoughts on it, and what do we think about the signing in general?
Yeah, I could kick it off. To be honest, I don't tend to tune into too many of the Bellator fights. Obviously, you know about Patchy Mix, hasn't lost since 2020. He's been dominant over there in Bellator. I'm just most excited. First of all, he gets into a great weight class that's, high activity at the top with a bunch of legends still up there. And second of all, I think this is a great opportunity for Mario Bautista. We just saw it with Yair when Pitbull came over. You get a guy who's obviously highly regarded coming into your organization, your promotion. This is the chance where not only I feel like you put the colors up, like the UFC colors on your back and you go win, but I think the UFC, it's like a star power. If you win that fight against the guy coming from another promotion, it propels your career a little bit more. And I think we kind of see that with Yair, immediately back in title contention and title talks. So I'm excited. I mean, I've seen his highlights. I know he's a great, well-rounded fighter, and I'm excited to see what he could do in the UFC.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's gonna be a great fight. I'm glad that they matched up. Kind of as fucked up as it sounds, I think after that Aldo fight with Batista, everybody that was a UFC fan was calling for that guy's head. I mean, they wanted to put him up against John Jones. They wanted to put him against Alex Pereira. Obviously, those are all jokes, but it kind of goes to show the public, hate that he got after that performance against one of the UFC legends, and kind of just how he took that win. Of course, you're in there with somebody so dangerous that you kind of have to almost play defensive and just hug him till the fight's over. But I'm excited to see it. Patchy Mix is great. He's awesome. Really fucking good grappler. He's super good actually at grappling. And he's a guy that I'm glad that they're pulling him out of Bellator at the right time. We saw Michael Chandler. That's something that kind of happened a little bit too late. I mean, he's an absolute banger from Bellator, but and he's still hanging with the high comp in the UFC. But if he would have gotten in just a few years younger, he would have had a really, really nice shot at the title. I don't even know who would have been champion, a few years before he got in, but yeah, I mean, never mind. But either way, I think he could have had an even longer, UFC career. And seeing Patchy get pulled up at this time in his career where he's just on an absolute tear. I think he's got one loss in the last I don't know how many fights. I think he only has one loss.
Only has one loss, yeah.
Yeah. So and he's beating Russian grapplers left and right with submissions. I mean, this dude's just amazing. So. Very excited to see what Patchy can do in the UFC. He's got the world in his hands right now, and it just all comes down to how he can perform. And I think Batista is going to be, a good first victim for him.
Yeah, I mean, not much more to say there. Like you said, Son, it's good that he's getting in young, pretty much at the prime of his career, rather than see like Patricio Pitbull coming in near the end of his career, throwing him against really tough competition. Yair Rodriguez, start him off slow, build him up, have him make a name for himself against Mario Bautista. A lot of the fans don't really like him, so he can go out and get a pretty dominant win or, a good finish over Mario Bautista. UFC fans who don't know who he is now will probably be riding his side, riding his coattails for the time to come, and then he could slowly, not even slowly, but, 2-3 fights after that be in line for a title shot, just get some fresh blood into the mix. I could see like a whole Mario Bautista to Song Yadong to maybe like a Piotr Jan to a title shot. Some timeline within that for like some framework there where we could see this guy fighting for a belt, as long as everything goes in his favor. But we'll see. I mean, you always say it's like there's a tough jumping competition from going to like the Bellator belt to like the top 10 in the UFC, I'd say, in any weight class. So hopefully he can hang in there. He's never been finished. Only one decision loss in his entire career. Like, this dude's a prospect.
Yeah, 100%. I'm pumped up to watch him fight, and just getting new blood that has the potential, or at least a lot of people think has the potential to be towards the top of the division is always exciting. So hopefully this signing pans out for the UFC. I mean, it can't really not pan out because either it proves how good the UFC really is, or they have a new exciting fighter. And I think Mario Bautista is a fun matchup. So yeah, I'm excited for the signing, and I'm excited to watch him fight Mario Bautista. But before I move on, I want to say for everyone listening, please drop a like. It'd be greatly appreciated. It helps out a lot. Sub would be awesome. Thank you guys for always tuning in. It's always appreciated. But go on, Son.
No, I just want to say real quick, I guess just get my last point in. For anybody that doesn't know who Patchy Mix is, he beat a guy named Magomed Magomedov by guillotine. So that's all you need to know. And now we can move on to the next segment. But yeah, if you're a fan, you don't know who this guy is, that's pretty much all you need to know.
All right, let's move on from there. So we have Islam Makhachev in some breaking news, vacating his lightweight belt and moving up to welterweight. And it seems like the UFC made Islam vacate because he always said, I want to be the double champ. He seemed to think he could be the simultaneous double champ. So I guess I wanted to get your guys' thoughts first on what do we think about the UFC making Islam vacate? Did he deserve to have the opportunity to get that double belt? I'll let you kick this one off, Ryan.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. You see double champs. I don't know. You have like guys. I think the first person they ever do it was McGregor. He held two belts simultaneously. And you saw what happened with that. He didn't defend either, and went straight to boxing with Floyd Mayweather. So kind of leaves a stain there. And I think the only guy that's ever really done it, where he's defended multiple belts at the same time, is DC. But other than that, it hasn't happened. And when someone does move up and try and either claims double belt status, it's either they've already left the division and they've moved up for good, or if they do get it, they don't defend. They only defend one, not the other. So in terms of like not being able to hold up the division for the UFC wise, I guess from Dana's perspective, it makes sense to put the foot down and be like, no more double champs simultaneously in the UFC. You go to a weight class and you stick to it. I know Islam, relatively active fighter, not the most active. And I think that's another reason why, it got drawn into it. It's like, all right, he fights twice a year. Really, realistically, if you're going to be doing double champ, it's so hard. I mean, you have to be fighting 3-4 times a year, and that caliber, of those caliber type fights, and
I guess to your point there,
fights.
Ryan. To your point there, he has Ramadan as well, and he's not going to fight during Ramadan. So you already know that block of the schedule's out the window.
You're missing like a month there. So, and then, like you said, like we touched on with welterweight, you have all these young killers coming up who are in line for a title shot. If Islam didn't move up, 3 guys right away off the bat would have been up in the running for a title shot. Pretty much like a lottery pick, and either of them get it, everyone's happy. No one's really complaining besides the 2 guys that didn't. And it goes the same way with the lightweight division now that Topuria has moved up. You have Topuria right there. You have Paddy Pimblett making the name, beating Michael Chandler. He's probably 1, maybe 2 wins away from a title fight. They're throwing Gaethje's name around there, for Islam's next opponent, they probably would pan out the same way Khabib and Charles did. So you have all these guys, especially in the lightweight division, who are on the near the end of their careers. They're looking for one last shot at the belt. It's like a disservice to those guys as well, who are legends in the sport, who would have to sit there and wait another year, another year to 14, 15 months before getting a title shot. And by then, you don't know what you're going to look like, at 34 as opposed to 35 or 36, when you get that chance. So I think it does make sense. And then Topuria, Islam could always move back down, you lose the JDM. There you go. Give him Topuria, the winner of Topuria Oliveira. Maybe he vacates the welterweight belt after that and chooses not to defend it after the JDM fight. Just goes up, proves that he could get 2 belts, that he could win in 2 weight classes, moves back down to lightweight where he's made a home for himself, and fight there as well. So.
Did Cejudo defend both belts at the same time? He might have as well. I think he did. I think he won the one up and then went down. So I guess Cejudo did it, but it's probably easier for him to do than someone at 155 pounds going up to 170, back down to 155. But
yeah, I guess my worry is that the double champ status wouldn't be a thing anymore. Seeing a guy like Islam having to vacate the belt, in this league that we have going on, if there's anybody that's deserving to keep their belt to move up, that poses a serious threat to any weight class up or down from them, I think, that is a guy that you like keep the belt. Although what I'm thinking that is their thought process here and what they could be doing here is have Islam move up. If he gets that belt, he can keep that and then go down and try and get the belt back again. That makes a lot more sense to me because that allows the division that he's leaving. He's not holding anything up, especially with Ilia moving up. He's probably going to go. He is going to go for the title shot now. And you don't hold that division up. You prove that you can go up and get that second belt. Because I don't know how many times we've seen people try and go up and get that second belt. It just doesn't happen. And then once he wins that, he can come back down, defend, get the belt back, and then that's your double champ status. In my mind, that's how it'll play out if Islam ends up moving up and winning the belt.
Now, one question for you. I agree. It does make sense, but then wouldn't that be the whole reason why you have an interim title fight, right? You can have the interim fight. It doesn't hold up the division. He can go up, then come back down. You fight the interim champ. That's what I thought they were going to do initially. So that's why I don't know how they're going to, play it.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I can allude to is the whole Tom Aspinall, John Jones situation. An interim championship belt is great, but it means nothing when there's a real championship belt out there.
How do you let Tom Aspinall sit there and hold on to an interim, not him hold on to it, but John Jones keep the division stagnant and have an interim hold the belt for a year and a half, almost 2 years, when you're not going to allow an interim title fight at the lightweight division for a guy who's defended it 4 times?
Yeah,
that's where the question, that's where it comes in, where it's a bit hypocritical on the UFC to not allow it in this instance, where even if Islam were to go up and back down, my guess is he'd be more active than John Jones has been as the heavyweight champ. So, yeah. And John Jones has earned the right in the light heavyweight division. Islam's done this in the lightweight division. I'm not arguing that John Jones shouldn't have had the right to kind of do his thing. At this point, I think it's a bit ridiculous. It's kind of dragged out for far too long. But I just don't get how we can allow that, but not this. I don't know. It's tough. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah. I guess I'll turn it to you, Zach. Do you think that the double champ status days are behind us then? Do you think that they're going to allow somebody to hold on to the belt in 2 divisions at the same time? Or do you just not think that's going to be probable to not hold up, any division up or down?
I think this makes it effectively dead. I understood them making Ilia vacate more than making Islam vacate. Ilia had 1 title defense, had been talking. Islam talked about moving up for a while too, but he talked about being double champ, that being the goal. Whereas Ilia, he wanted to go up, make the biggest fight imaginable happen against Islam. So I just think it's a bit tough, that whole, situationally comparing. But Islam was definitely much more deserving to hold on to it and not be forced to vacate. I understood Ilia a bit more. Islam, I just don't really get it. And if they're not allowing him to do it, I don't see them really allowing anyone to do it. So, yeah, I think it's effectively dead. Henry Cejudo was the last guy to do it. I know he was bragging about it. He was like, haha, last guy, let me keep my name relevant and put out this tweet. So, yeah, I guess hats off to Henry Cejudo.
Yeah. My 2 cents on it is I think, kind of some what you hit on, the Tom Aspinall, John Jones situation has left us such a bad taste in the top, in the C-suite level of the UFC, that they're like, we're not doing the interim BS anymore. Obviously, John Jones was hurt at first. Tom Aspinall was an interim for a while, and now he's just kind of, touring Thailand or whatever he's doing. But I think in case of an injury, or like you said, Islam's not that active, they don't want anyone to have the interim belt for a year. I think you always get that point in every business where there's a precedent set and then they don't go back to it. So I think it's less of the double champ they're getting away from. I think they're just kind of scared right now and they got cold feet for the interim whole dilemma. And I think that's more of the reasoning here.
Yeah, that could make sense. Talking about Islam moving up, I guess we should speak on that matchup with JDM. That's been confirmed by the UFC. Date's not confirmed yet, but confirmed that that's the matchup. I think it's a very fun stylistic matchup because Islam, as good as he is and as good as he's shown he is, he has shown that he does get hit, right? He's there, he brawls. JDM can pack a damn punch. He's never fought in the welterweight division. It's a scary fight. Bilal Muhammad wasn't able to go in there and bully him. I know Islam's probably a better wrestler than Bilal by probably, I mean, he is probably better pure grappler. Bilal will say it, but he's a lightweight moving up to welterweight. Bilal's been a welterweight, not a massive one, but I'm curious on how that plays out. Ryan, I'll let you kick this one off. Are you going with JDM or Islam in your early prediction?
Early prediction, I mean, I'll have to look into it more, but given how effective JDM was at just, denying the grappling and how aggressive he is, he's not one to shy away. He'll walk you down. He has crisp boxing, great takedown defense. And I guess just the fact that Bilal, in terms of size, right, Bilal could never make lightweight.
No.
So, in the same way JDM could never make lightweight. JDM already has the size advantage there, and he just, even if he gets taken down, he's scrambling. He's always scrambling, looking for positions. And I think if Islam takes him down, he starts hitting those scrambles, it's going to be like a thing where it's like, oh, wait, he's lighter, maybe stronger, but he's lighter. You could shake him off a little bit easier. And then he'll just be able to walk him down in the boxing sense and you're going to have to strike with him. And JDM's all punishment in that aspect. That's what I touched on, my prediction for the Bilal fight, where it's just he's going to walk you down. He's really not going to back off. He doesn't really care about the takedown if he doesn't see it as a threat. And even if he does get taken down, like I said, he'll shuck it off, scramble, look for position, get up against the cage, get back up, work to his feet. And then as soon as his back's against the cage, he's throwing crisp elbows inside the pocket, hurting you, forcing you to move back. And then he's walking you down to the center of the octagon. And I don't think it'll be any different. I think Islam will give him a tougher fight. But I think the size here does come into play, especially with the guy as menacing as JDM is and has been in that welterweight division. But who knows? That might change my mind. Might get a little drunk on our pod for this and just be like, "Fuck it, Islam, let's go." We'll see.
Luke, you got this. I'll let you speak.
Yeah, I've had a ton of back and forth since both these fights have kind of been announced. I'll touch on the Ilia fight a little bit too, but I think this is like a kind of a perfect storm for something that we're losing probably the best fight, since Khabib McGregor, I would say. With these two, I mean, you could say Volk Islam, but I think this has a little more hype. I think it worked out perfectly for both. I think you see Ilia move up, and obviously he wanted Islam, and he's not getting that right away. But if he doesn't beat Charles Oliveira, I wouldn't want to see him fight Islam. Like if he goes out there and Charles, gets him down and chokes him out, which I kind of see the only path or the probably the game plan against Ilia for Charles, then I don't think I really wanted to see that Islam fight. I think Islam would have the same success. In terms of for Islam moving up, like you guys said, he's been talking about this forever. It's not like some brand new thing, like he's running away, which is kind of the narrative. I get it that every fan wants to see Ilia versus Islam. I think we're going to get that. And I think this is a huge, huge challenge for Islam going up and fighting a guy with JDM's skill set. Not only does JDM have great, boxing, kickboxing, great combinations. Saw that display a couple weeks ago. But in addition, he's got Craig Jones in his corner, and we might be on the cusp of Dagestani wrestling having kryptonite. Because, I mean, we saw it a little bit with Volk, JDM with Bilal. We've seen it. Craig Jones has talked about it on interviews. He's using it to prop up his image. But I think that's also a great narrative that goes in to this JDM fight, because obviously the Australian guys are very much together in the UFC scene. I'm excited for that fight. I think that's a great fight. I think if you were to split, this prize down the middle and you get Ilia and Charles and you get JDM and Islam, it's like the best case scenario. And like you guys said with the double champ, I know it stinks, but I think Sonya hit it on the head. He's going to, if Islam wins, he's going, and Ilia wins, he's going right back down. There's no playing around at welterweight. He's going right back down. I'll read this tweet because I sent it to another group chat with some friends back home. He said, "This is Islam. Difference between me and you that I cleaned out the top of my division, moved to the next, but you ran away from two contenders who had consecutive 5 to 9 wins in featherweight division. You are nobody in lightweight division, just a big mouth from Spain with a nice haircut. Go get one dub and we could talk, boy." That's not, hey, I'm thinking about it. That's not to kick your ass. Like,
that's cold.
We've never seen this. We've seen Islam talk shit like on the mic a little bit. He got mad with DP. He's funny. He's got this is a tweet from Islam. Now we haven't seen this kind of ferocity out of him. He wants that fight just as bad, but he has a goal, and you got to respect the guy who has a goal. He's had a game plan. He set it out, and if he goes up and beats JDM, it's way bigger for his legacy, in my opinion, than beating Ilia just moving up. If Ilia beats Charles, that adds to it 100%. But right now, man, I think this is a huge challenge for Islam. I'm not going to make a pick yet for either of those fights. I think we're in store for 2 bangers, and I think the UFC is really shaping up for the end of this year. After kind of a lackluster, beginning of the year, kind of after 300, we've been mixed matched. The fan reaction across media has been mixed matched of how they feel about the UFC and its promotion. I think we're hitting a banger at the end of this year and starting 2026 off with potential Islam versus Ilia. So I'm excited. I'm excited as shit.
Yeah, look, there's really not much left to say. I mean, between you and Ryan, you guys covered pretty much every base. The Craig Jones point is a very good point. I mean, he is obviously, Craig Jones is a guy that, when he faced up against Gordon Ryan in grappling, he had this opportunity to sub him, and he damn near got him, 1 or 2 times. And Gordon Ryan's, known as, the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world, minus the steroids. That's a different question. But, he's unreal. And Craig Jones put up a very good challenge against him, almost winning that grappling match. So, Craig Jones, his resume speaks for itself. That dude's, kind of wild. He's a crazy dude, but, you got to respect him. I always liked him. I thought he was a dog. But having him in your corner, really just talking you through those grappling exchanges makes, a world of difference. He's going to put you in positions that, you didn't expect to be able to get into. He's super creative. He's super fucking good at grappling. If there's somebody that I'd want in my corner fighting a Dagestani, it'd be him. He's going to tell you exactly how to get out of those tough situations. He's going to tell you exactly, how to duck, weave, and move out of, all those grappling exchanges up in the clinch. So, that's a guy that is really going to play a huge part in JDM's corner for that fight. With that said, though, I can't in my right mind, pick against Islam in any case. Obviously moving up is a big deal, and JDM definitely has the size advantage there. But, going back to strikers, even Dustin Poirier, he kind of put some hands on Islam, but even so, Islam's just too good. He just keeps surprising, pulling shit out of pulling magic out of his hat. Always bringing something new, that you didn't know that he had in his bag last week or last fight, with his striking exchanges that he showed, being able to knock out Volk, that's all, crazy stuff that you wouldn't expect to see, out of Islam. So, I agree. I can't really give a pick right now. I definitely want to see how these training camps are going, who's in whose corner, how everything's going. Obviously, I think Craig Jones is pretty much a lock for JDM. So I'm very excited to see, what type of work they're putting in, what they're doing. Because, if Islam's just sitting up in the mountains grappling all day, I think JDM's going to give him a real tough challenge. But, Islam is evolving even at the high level that he is. He's found so much success in his grappling and wrestling. You would think that he just sticks to it, right? But he doesn't. You see every fight he brings something new. So very excited to see, how these guys are preparing for these fights, how, everything's going leading up closer to the fights. And then I'll be able to give you a more straightforward pick. And even then, I think it's going to be pretty much a toss-up. You got JDM size and striking abilities versus Islam, who's also a very sizable guy, crazy strong, moving up, being able to put a little bit more muscle on him. Is the length difference going to really make that much of a difference? With Islam being that strong and still being able to, just grab you by the hips and throw you on the ground. I guess that is to be determined still. But yeah, definitely super exciting stuff at the end of the year. Couldn't be more excited. And I think, to me, in a perfect world, in my mind, I get to see, if I get to see JDM beat Islam, finally maybe see Islam lose. As hateful as that sounds, he's put me through a lot of pain watching Charles Oliveira try and fight him, watching Volk try and fight him. So I wouldn't mind seeing that crotch sniffer get knocked out. But Islam, you're probably not watching this, but come on. And then, and then we get to see him go down, and if Ilia wins that fight, see him, see how that fight plays out. Cause that's, 2 guys that, have been on quite the roll, going against each other. So really not much to say, even though I said a lot. But super exciting stuff coming up.
I'll take that.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys. Sorry, this might play into what you're going to say. I saw today on Instagram, I was on the train, so the post disappeared with no connection, but I saw that Ilia's coaches and him broke up like this week because of the distance. I guess the coaches are in Madrid. It's like 4 hours away from where he is. Do you guys think that, that plays a role? That's huge a month out. I know he still has his brother in camp, and he's got the money to fund, those guys even coming out there. I don't know what the issue is there, if it's just the distance. What do you guys think about that?
I'm personally, I'm not putting too much stake into it. I know it's one of those things where you train with the guys your whole professional career, and that was kind of their thing, was like, oh, you're from this kind of small gym. You made it to where you are now and whatnot. MMA is not really huge in Spain professionally, especially he couldn't find any fights there. So the fact that he made it that far with that gym is crazy in itself. But I think all the tools are there for him, and he can easily go and sort them out. So I don't really think it's going to play too much of a factor in training or anything. I don't really know. I don't know. I'm not putting too much stake into it affecting his camp or performance in my eyes.
Yeah, I think some of that was a little bit announced or misreported. I think one of his head coaches, I guess he's got two main coaches that he's been working with. One of them will continue to work with him, from what I understood. Maybe rumors going around, but I think one of his coaches is staying with him. The other one he's cutting out. But I think it definitely does make a difference. You think Sean O'Malley, imagine Sean O'Malley without Tim Welsh one day, that's a massive difference against Sean O'Malley.
We see guys switch gyms all the time. Like Kamaru Usman went and switched over, and look, he's been over there in Colorado for how long now? Like, guys make changes and have success. So
yeah, but you could say he upgraded, with
and now who these guys that Ilia Topuria was with, who else have they trained at a high professional level? So is he really going to downgrade coaching wise? I don't know. I don't think so.
I doubt he's gonna. I doubt it's a downgrade. I'm sure he thought this through.
The guy's so calculated. The way he.
I almost be worried that maybe it's maybe Ilia's ego is getting maybe a little bit in front of him and kind of putting him in the situation, because Tim Welsh, even before Sean O'Malley, he was a fighter himself, but he didn't, have any crazy success. He's kind of the guy that, formed Sean O'Malley into the guy that we see today. And it's a very similar situation, if not the same situation with Ilia. It's not about, him being the best coach in the world, for all the MMA fighters in the world, but it's more so, this is the guy that built Ilia up. This guy knows Ilia, he sees him every day. He trains with him every day. He knows exactly how he thinks, what he does. You get a new guy, you could have Mike Tyson in your corner, and if he's teaching striking differently than you've known your whole life, it's not really about, the pedigree of the coach almost. It's he knows Ilia and how he trains.
But you could also make the argument, if you're going to go ahead and compare it to Sean O'Malley, right? All right, Sean O'Malley hasn't left his current situation. We don't know what it would be like if he were to leave. Would it be a good idea to leave Tim Welsh? Probably not. But I don't want to go out there and just assume that automatically it's a bad decision, because then you could be getting into some gym with some coaches that offer a different perspective that's beneficial to your career. They go and see some sort of weakness that you have and go ahead and patch that up. So you're getting a different set of eyes on yourself. So it could be good, could be bad. I completely understand your point, and I don't disagree at all. But a new set of eyes could be a good thing as well. It could go both ways.
Yeah, no, that's super fair. All fair points. I guess we will see how it plays out in that Charles fight.
And we'll get onto that in 1 second. I just wanted to say my little bit on Islam and that prediction with JDM. I am taking Islam, and using that Bilal fight as a reference point, which I think a lot of people will. I'm not a big MMA math guy. Islam is a much more dynamic and better striker. So I think JDM will be a little bit more wary of the striking of Islam, which could then in turn open up the grappling more. You get more success with your grappling, which then could create more success with your striking. It's just one of those things that goes hand in hand. And I do think Islam is just that good and is pound for pound number one. So that is my early prediction. And while we're on the conversation, Luke, I think you touched on this earlier perfectly with that quote you pulled out. I wanted to ask you guys a question of, do we think Islam ran from Ilia? Luke, I'll let you kick it off because I already know your answer. You already hit on it, but I just want to get that. It sounds foolish.
Yeah, it sounds foolish. I think I saw a video of Khabib or someone in Islam's camp. Like, we've already fought a featherweight twice. So I get from a common MMA standpoint, even like me, like obviously everyone wants to see that fight. No one doesn't want to see that fight. It will sell seats. It'll probably be the biggest pay-per-view in the last 5 years. It's going to be huge, regardless, any way you split it, if it happens down the road or not. But I just think when you have a guy that's stuck to a plan, you have a guy who has taken fights with, Volk twice now and beat him both times. And now you have a guy who has done less in the featherweight division, calling you out and saying, "Oh, I'm coming to fight you, give up my belt," before anything's even signed on the dotted line. I don't blame Islam at all. I don't think it's running. I think when you're the pound for pound number one, you don't run from anyone. He fights everyone. He signs the dotted line almost every time, with no questions asked. Even with the Moicano, he didn't have to take that fight. New opponent within 48 hours or whatever it was, a week maybe. We're not going to sit here and build this he's running argument here. I think anyone who watches Islam fight and knows Khabib and knows those guys in that camp, they don't run from anyone. I think he wants a new challenge, and I think that's just the main goal for him, is to beat JDM, and then we'll worry about everything later.
And I will say, too, the betting odds are going to be slimmer with him fighting JDM than they would have been if he fought Ilia. I saw with both of them.
Yeah, I saw their like pickups.
Yeah, it's like a pick 'em against JDM, and he was predicted to be like minus 200 against Ilia. So are you really going to duck someone to move up and fight what Vegas thinks is a tougher fight and what a lot of the public thinks might be a tougher fight? You're not going to duck and move up.
Ilia's a small guy too. Like, it's not like I know he had trouble with Volk that first fight, but I don't know. I feel like there's such a big jump in Islam from the first Volk fight to everything else we've seen that he's put together since. I just don't like. I don't see it as him being like, "Oh my God, I need to fight this guy. I'm scared to fight him. He might knock me out." Like, JDM can knock him out just as badly or worse. So I don't think he's ducking anything right now. If he wins it and then he doesn't want to go down and fight, I could see it creeping back in. But we'll worry about that when we get there. The JDM fight's huge.
It's my issue with the Islam tweet that you had earlier, Lucas, because Ali Abdelaziz is his manager, and that dude's just known for hopping on Twitter for all of his fighters and just tweeting shit that never came out of their mouths. So it's like was that an Islam tweet or is that an Ali Abdelaziz tweet?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, I think at this point, if anyone else doesn't have anything to say regarding Islam and Ilia and the running, Son, I don't know if you have something or if we want to go and move on to Charles Oliveira versus Ilia now.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know we've kind of been, milking this a little bit, but I definitely don't think it's fair to say that Islam was running at all. I mean, Ilia, like you guys said, I mean, he's fought everybody, or not Ilia, Islam's fought everybody, and that they put in front of him. What I do think is it's slightly a business move on all party sides. The way Ilia was coming up, he was moving up. He wasn't accepting any contender fights. He was obviously going straight for the belt, and everybody wanted to see that. I mean, any fan wanted to see that. And Ilia moves up. Obviously, he's got a case for himself. There's still a little bit of a debate whether he would have, he had the case to do it or not. I think that most people agree that he could have, gone in and taken that championship fight immediately after moving up. What I do think from Islam's side, it is a smart move to move up, try and get a second belt. Whether you win or lose, you can go down and reclaim that belt. But you also don't have to take the risk of seeing how Ilia reacts to being in that bigger weight class. You get a little bit of film on him in that lightweight division. You get to see how he fights a guy like Charles Oliveira, who Islam's very familiar with. As long as Ilia wins the Charles fight, regardless of either Islam wins or loses against JDM, regardless of how that goes, as long as Ilia wins that fight, the hype is even bigger for the Islam-Ilia fight than it is today. So the UFC benefits from it, Ilia benefits from it, and Islam's kind of in a position where whether he wins or loses, he's going back and getting a championship fight, and he's going to fight, whoever, wins between Charles and Ilia. So I think on all parties, it's the best business move. Sure, we delayed a little bit for the fans. Are probably the only party losing here. But it just makes sense. Business move wise, views wise, money wise, it makes sense for everybody. And then it also gives Islam a chance to go and try and get that double champ status.
Yeah. Well said. Moving on, and we'll keep the ball in the ballpark. That is Ilia Topuria. His fight against Charles Oliveira, which was announced, that is coming up on International Fight Week. I want your guys' predictions on that one. I'll kick it off myself. I hate saying it. I do like Charles Oliveira, but I think Ilia Topuria is just such a tough matchup because he hits like a fucking bus. Charles Oliveira gets hit. And what happens when he gets hit? He pulls guard. I don't think he's going to be able to pull guard against Ilia Topuria because he's such a good grappler as well. And I think he's going to have that forward pressure on the ground and not allow Charles to go and throw up some sub threat that deters him. And I don't think he'll have a problem with jumping on the ground with him. So I'm predicting an Ilia Topuria knockdown, ground and pound, TKO finish. And I think he gets it done within 2 rounds. I think this guy is legit, and the superstardom will grow even more.
Yeah, I agree with you on some points and disagree with you on others. I do think Charles gets hit a lot. I do think Ilia can hit really hard. And I do think Ilia is going to hit Charles really hard to the point of dropping him. What I do think is going to get in between that is the mentality of both the fighters in that exact exchange. Ilia presses forward really hard. Ilia puts a pause on you. He runs you down. And unless he gets a standing knockout, where he just immediately slumps you, like kind of how we saw with, pretty much anybody who's fought. Charles is going to lose that fight, on the feet, just getting knocked out. What I will say is if he presses Charles and knocks him down, Charles can kind of pass him a little bit like he usually does when he gets tapped on the chin. Sit on the ground, get his legs up in that jiu-jitsu position. If Ilia gets a little bit too overconfident or too excited seeing Charles drop like that, which I can see happening. I mean, the only time you kind of see Ilia lose composure is when he sees the other fighter drop. If you see Charles drop, just from his past experiences in the UFC, he's going to want to bull rush him and try and get that finish. We've seen Charles. His most dangerous position is when you touch him on the chin and he falls down on the ground. If you're dumb enough to engage him on the ground, regardless of if you're Ilia Topuria, you're going to be in serious danger from Charles Oliveira. I think there's a lot more paths maybe to victory for Ilia, but I think Charles definitely poses a crazy threat to Ilia because he can play possum really well, and when he gets knocked down, that's probably when he's the most dangerous. And let's not forget, his crazy submission statistics. This guy's, dare I say, the best submission artist in the UFC probably ever. I mean, to me, he is.
I think the numbers speak to. Completely confident in that.
I think the numbers speak for themselves very well. I mean, and especially you get a smaller guy, not smaller because he's a fucking tanky ass build, but you get a lengthwise and height wise a smaller guy against Charles. On the ground, you have a lot more leverage with the length. You can put him in a lot different positions. You can kind of squirm your way, to where Ilia thinks he has an advantage and he actually doesn't. So I think that's where Charles has, a huge advantage is the way that they fight, is that Ilia presses really hard. If he gets him on the ground, Charles is going to be in the perfect position. I'm going to say exactly where he wants to be against Ilia. Because, sure, you have a few opportunities for a ground and pound there and finish the fight, but, Charles is just so dangerous when he's on his back. So, if you're Ilia Topuria, you really, really have to be careful when you do get that knockdown, because that's exactly when Charles is going to go for you, and he knows it. He's going to be waiting for it. So, I want to hear what you guys got to say, but that's my take on it.
Ryan?
Yeah, son, I agree with you pretty much in all aspects of that, especially at the playing possum part. The only thing that concerns me is that if you get knocked down the round, and if you do have that advantage that Charles has being so sick on the ground where you get to play possum, you're still losing that round. You know what I mean? So it's like, if this happens over the course, if it happens in one round, then Charles is able to, effectively work his game plan for the rest, he'll probably win that fight. But if it's going, if it happens 2 rounds, even 3 rounds, you might, Charles might be able to turn it back around on him. But then when it gets to reading that decision, you're going to be thinking, well, shit, Ilia he dropped him in one, Charles was on his back for like a minute or two, Ilia followed up, Charles was able to neutralize it, but he was still on his back. Maybe he threw up a submission, but it really didn't go anywhere. And then round 2 starts, it stays on the feet, Charles pushes him against the cage, maybe just weight bullies him a little bit, gets his thing off, and then you have this situation, okay, they're 1-1 going to round 3. Round 3 happens, he gets cracked by Ilia, sometimes Charles doesn't even really get dropped, but he'll just get cracked. And then he'll back up and then just lay down. And you have to go, shit, well, okay, this is the same that happened again, in round 1 where he played possum. Maybe Charles gets, like a better chance at a submission, but still in the back of your mind, it's like who had the more effective striking in that round, who did more damage based on the areas that they were in, and you have to go Ilia. Same thing, then you get to rounds 4 and 5 where Charles is able to effectively work his game plan, maybe bully him a little bit. Because I don't really see Charles hurting him on the feet, but I see him being able to, maybe outstrike him here and there, for a couple minutes each round, rounds 4 and 5, later rounds. But then I'll just come back straight to those judges where it's like, oh, Ilia cracked him, Charles played possum, and then you're going to get to this point where it's like, did Charles play possum too long, where the judges going. I guess that's the one thing that really scares me, because outside of, like, obviously Ilia could just knock anyone out. You've seen it, the power carries. We saw it when he fought Jai Herbert. The power definitely does carry up in that division. He has that one-punch knockout power still at 155. It'll come down to Charles's game plan. I do see he's been his sparring partner for this has been Gene Silva. So I don't know, man. You could see something crazy coming out of the Oliveira camp, but I think any way this goes, especially if it goes to decision with Charles's history of playing possum, like you said, I have Ilia edging it out with scorecards.
Yeah, I'm going to differ with you, Ryan. I'm not going to make a full prediction. I'll give my breakdown, but I don't think this one makes it to scorecards in any sense. I think this ends in a finish. I think you guys hit on it. My biggest concern, obviously, Charles is very chinny. We've seen him get knocked down by Michael Chandler, by, I think Gaethje hit him pretty hard. I don't know if he got knocked down by Islam, but obviously that fight was over quick.
He did, and he played possum too, as well, and that's kind of what led to a submission as well.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. My biggest look forward to for this fight is just, I feel like we hear the jiu-jitsu and the grappling out of Topuria's camp, but I don't know if we've really seen it on full display to the point where he's going to be testing this fight. Obviously, he fought Bryce Mitchell, who had the flu, and at this point in time, we could kind of say Bryce Mitchell maybe was never the true prospect that we thought. When the guys are getting better, he's kind of, stayed stagnant. Obviously, he's got other issues going on, but and then really other than that, I remember Ilia beat Ryan Hall back in the day, and I don't know if you guys remember Ryan Hall, but he's the heel hook legend. So all he does is shoot for heel hooks, which he ended up just knocking him out when he was down trying for a heel hook. But that's what I'm really looking forward to, because not only is it, you're going against the best grappler or best, submission artist in the history of the UFC, but you're also going against a guy that is way longer than you, way taller than you, and has been fighting at 155, and also has hard cuts to 155. I mean, we've seen him not make championship weight against Justin Gaethje. Maybe the scale was tipped, but whatever. Everything it's just like, I feel like it's a really good stylistic matchup. We see a guy knockout power, maybe the best featherweight knockout artist ever, and then you put him up 10 more pounds. He's going to bring that power, but he's fighting a way bigger guy, a guy known for his grappling. So I'm very excited. I think that's my biggest thing with Ilia, is I really want to see Charles test his grappling. And it leads into my point I made earlier with Islam. Like, I'm okay with this fight happening first, because if Charles has success grappling, what is Islam going to do to him? A lot of the same, if not way more. But yeah, I think you guys hit on the head. Ilia could catch him early, and this could be a quick ending to a long-awaited fight. I'm hoping it doesn't go that way. I know Ilia I think he fought Josh Emmett into the late rounds, but other than that, we see him get guys out of there early. I would love to see like a round 3-4, like them really scrapping. We've seen Charles go 5. We've seen him gas out a little bit too, like in that Chandler fight, the most recent one. So it's a great matchup, man. I'm not going to make a prediction right now. I could see both guys' path to victory here. I want to see how the camp goes. I saw a funny post. It was like Charles, Ilia, JDM, Islam, and it was like, who pulls out first? So I think that's definitely something to be scared about looking into these fights. But yeah, it's going to be fireworks, man. Whatever happens, we're going to be on our feet. So,
you know what? I'm giving my conspiratorial take here on the outlook of the UFC. And Son, I take back what I said earlier about the UFC, the days of the double champ being dead, because I do think there will be a double champ in the very near future. And I texted about this recently, but I think maybe why the reason they did not let Islam Makhachev keep that lightweight belt and move up to welterweight is because when he goes up to welterweight and beats JDM, as I predicted earlier, and Ilia Topuria goes up to lightweight and beat Charles Oliveira, as I predicted earlier, they will then say, you know what? It's time to make the 165-pound weight class division. Welterweight will go up to 170. They introduce 165, and they make the biggest fight in UFC history. You have the 175-pound welterweight champ go down to 165. The 155-pound lightweight champ go up to 165. Fight for that inaugural belt, and bang, there you go. Winner of that, double champ, biggest fight ever. I don't know. It's been teased
That
before.
is such an advantage to Islam.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It 100% is. But I know Topuria's brother was just like, oh, you know what? It's good that Islam's moving up to 170 so that when Ilia takes a 155-pound belt, he can go up to 170 and be the first ever triple champ. No, make that at 165 and allow both of them to have the chance to be the first ever triple champ in UFC history. Now, that would be sick.
Man,
That's-
right when the welterweight division got good, we're making another division right
Hey,
between.
Just moving it up. Just moving
maybe
up.
the welterweight
Yeah.
division's too good. Maybe it's too good. We could split it in half and spread some love, you know?
Yeah, no, it's fair. Good points.
I
You
don't
know
know.
damn
That'd
well
be-
Kevin Holland would be fighting at 165 just to have some fun.
just to add another
Yeah.
one. Yeah, fuck it. And outside of that, the only other thing I had left on the agenda for today was we did receive an Instagram DM asking some questions about some old time legends and how they would fare in different eras. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So I figured, you know what, let's touch on those a little bit. I will say my personal knowledge on fights before I was a fan of may not completely be there, but let's see what we got here. First question is, if Fedor had come into the UFC in 2009 to 2010, could he have been champion when some of those other guys like Carwin Jr., Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez, and Brock Lesnar were running the division? I don't know if anyone wants to kick this one off, if anyone has some sort of opinion on this one, but
Yeah, I can take this. I pretty much grew up watching UFC, and probably other than Anderson Silva, because obviously I grew up in Brazil. Other than Anderson Silva, the one guy that was always like, damn, this guy's the best in the world, Fedor Emelianenko. And let me remind you guys, I mean, back then it was Pride. That was effectively what the UFC is today. It was the best mixed martial arts. League or whatever you want to call it, championship promotion in the world. By far, Pride was it. You had Rampage Johnson, you had the Nogueira brothers, pretty much the whole Nogueira family. You had, Don Fry in there. You had everybody, everybody that was important back in the day and that was the best in the world was out there fighting in Pride. And the king of that whole, promotion was Fedor Emelianenko. And even to this day, I think there's a very good case, and I don't think there will be too much crazy argument in saying that Fedor Emelianenko is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Obviously, you have a lot of, you have Stipe Miocic, nowadays that people kind of make that argument. Obviously a lot of crazy prospects in the heavyweight division. But Fedor Emelianenko for years on end was the scariest man, walking the planet. Nobody could touch him. He went on crazy win streaks. He was a champion, and I don't know how many times he was the greatest. Now you put him up against guys like Brock Lesnar. I think Brock Lesnar, he with all his careers, I don't think he would have been able to survive at all. I think the biggest guy that would pose a threat to those names that you picked out would be Cain Velasquez, because that's another guy that people forget about in that heavyweight division. How good that guy was. He's unreal. He was unreal back in the day. Maybe primes wouldn't have lined up to where we could have gotten like a full prime Fedor versus a prime Cain Velasquez, but we still would have got a damn good banger out of it. Now, so I guess to speak to the point whether he would have gone to the UFC in 2009, the UFC was good in 2009, but it's not at all what it is today in terms of quality of fighters and greatness. So I think, Fedor Emelianenko, you could put him in any league in the world. You can put him up against any other heavyweight in the world. I think he would have won that fight, especially when he was in his prime. So I don't think that changes much. I don't think it changes his legacy at all. I think nowadays the UFC name carries a lot more weight than, Pride does. But I think that's just because, people don't remember, or people just don't know how legitimate Pride FC was. It was super fucking good. Everybody in there was super good. All the best in the world were fighting to get that Pride spot. And Fedor was effectively the king of that in heavyweight. So, were he to go to the UFC, I think he clears it out. I think he becomes champ for a few years on end. But he didn't. He stuck to Pride, and he was still champion for a few years on end. So I mean, Fedor, I don't think it changes a thing. That guy is, at that time, he was the greatest heavyweight of all time and walking the earth. So I don't think it changes anything at all.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit. Fedor, like you talked about, is still to this day regarded as one of the best heavyweights of all time. And at the time in 2009, the UFC heavyweight champ was Mark Hunt, who Fedor Lomachenko submitted a couple years prior. And Fedor beat other guys like Andrei Arlovsky, who also held that heavyweight belt. So to answer this guy's question, yes, I do think Fedor would have been the champ if he did enter the UFC in 2008, 2009, or wherever in that time range. So yeah, my answer is yes. Ryan, Luke, I don't know if you guys have anything to add. If not, we can move on to the next one.
We're good to move on. For me, Luke, I don't know about you.
Yeah, obviously, this was before my time in terms of UFC. But since I've gotten into UFC, probably like everyone else, you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. If you've followed Joe Rogan, even from I think I probably started listening 2016, 2017. He's always talked about Fedor, the biggest what if he came to the UFC. I think Sonya hit on a great point with the Pride being at the top of the game back in the day. He's probably just making more money, not having to go to America to fight too. It's probably something simple like that. I know there was I know I've heard people talk about there are some they wanted to do like a trade or get him over there and it just never aligned, which sucks. You would love to see him fight for that. But at the end of the day, you can't always just look at the UFC as a perennial organization because it is right now, hasn't always been. I mean, we saw Demetrius Johnson be in the UFC and then leave, and he was still probably the best flyweight in the world for 5 to 6 more years after that. You could argue until he was really done. But if you just look at, I think the stats, if you go on Tapology, I have it up right now, 40-7 career record. I think there was a point where he won 30 straight MMA matches across Sambo was a little bit mixed in there, 1 no contest. And then he had 3 losses and then went on another 5-fight win streak. And before he went 30-0, he won 4 straight. So it's how can you not say that a guy would be a champion when he is 40-7 in the UFC and has fought in for 20 plus years at a professional level at 130 straight matches? I sometimes don't feel like you need to watch all the highlights. Obviously, you've seen the highlights if you're on MMA, Instagram, and you could look it up on YouTube and stuff. I sometimes, you can compare it to football or baseball. Sometimes the stats just speak for themselves. And I think with this question, yeah, I 100% agree. At some point in time, if Fedor would be in the UFC, he would have won a belt. He probably would have held it for a decently long time.
Yeah, agreed. And the next question asked was, if Brock Lesnar got into MMA under elite camps and coaches right after college, which was right after winning an NCAA Division I national championship at the University of Minnesota, how good would he have been? Top 5 heavyweight of all time, which I think probably yes. Would he be in the GOAT conversation? Reminder, this is pre-USADA era. And yeah. I guess, Son, you can touch on this one first.
I think it's tough it's a very, what if question, what if this would have happened? So it's always tough to answer those. I guess I'm glad we brought up the Brock Lesnar talk because, you see his daughter in the headlines every day. Obviously, Brock Lesnar is just an absolute genetic freak specimen. That's like a 1 in a million, 1 in a billion type of human that walks the earth. Genetics wise, this dude is just absurd. And then you add, steroids on top of that. And he is just, an absolute force to be reckoned with. So it's tough to say, whether, if he would have just left football after NCAA and gone to an elite camp, would he have been that great? I mean, it's very possible. I think I don't know if he would be in the GOAT conversation, but, when you get a guy that's just so physically gifted like that and was just literally just born that good, it's tough to kind of see anybody beat him. Even with how well he fought, after all his stints in, football and wrestling and all this stuff, how good he was, that's just pure, this guy was just born like this, plus like a tiny bit of steroids here and there. But that's just like pure genetics. Like this dude he was unreal. He was very scary. Like I remember watching him when I was a kid, and I would like almost like cover my face with the sheets when he was walking out there because he was so scary, dude. Like I remember like watching him in WWE, watching him in the UFC when he was fighting. He was just a scary dude. Like he brought that Undertaker vibe when he walked into that UFC cage. So definitely could have been like, I mean, even like some people can even like say that, he, with the competition he had, getting the belt and having, obviously the heavyweight division moves really slow. So he has one of the longest, title reigns of all time at heavyweight. But, I think there is a good argument to be made that he's definitely top 10 in the heavyweight division. And, if you were to just go into MMA straight after that, had he not had all his career changes, we very well could have seen him be regarded as the best heavyweight of all time. Now, I would have loved to see a Fedor and Brock Lesnar fight in the UFC cage. I think that would, now that we mentioned both of those names, I think that would have been, an awesome matchup to have. And I would have just gone Fedor just because that dude's just unreal technique. He's a guy that was made through the fire. He was forged, and Brock Lesnar just happened to be, born that way. So I would have Fedor winning that fight, but I just don't think he had enough time. He had what, like 8, 9 UFC fights. I forget what it was. It just wasn't very long. Yeah, so 8.
Well, 9. There was one no contest, so I guess it was 9. So you're right either way, but
Yeah, so fuck, I'll take it. But yeah, I mean, I just don't think he had enough time. I mean, his timeline was really short in the UFC. Very tough to answer that question. Very tough to say, but he is a genetic freak, and you get a freak like that, not a freak, a specimen like that, and you give him the proper training early on, and the sky's the limit. I mean, and maybe that might not even be it. Maybe above the sky's the limit for a guy like that. So I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, if anything. But that's, I think Brock could have been great if he would have really taken MMA seriously.
yeah, here's my quick take on it. Then I'll let someone take the floor. So Brock Lesnar started MMA when he was near 30 years old, and if he were to have gone straight out of college at 22, that's 8 additional years of training and whatnot. It's very hard to say that he wouldn't be one of the greatest heavyweights, if not the greatest heavyweight of all time. But the question that you can pose is, well, Cain Velasquez absolutely beat his brakes off when they fought for the belt in 2010, outstruck him by over 5-6 times the amount, and just literally if you see the fight, he just beat the brakes off him. So will the additional 8 years of training make him a better fighter than Cain Velasquez? I don't know. It's a good question. I'm not too sure, but he definitely would have had a longer title reign. He would have gotten the belt earlier, and he would definitely be regarded as one of the top 2 heavyweights to ever live.
Yeah, I guess in a sense, probably the dude probably would have been nasty in all areas, but I mean, even then, his career is still cut short. Even when he started MMA, he was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and that really showed when he fought Alistair Overeem. A couple of knees to the stomach, and the dude was down for the count, which is no fault to his own. Like you get dealt some bad cards in life, and that is what it is. So I guess there's that aspect too. I guess the other thing is, I think, because we all know Brock juiced to the gills, you could get away with it in that era. And, like you see like the same thing like TRT Belfort, Alice, like Overeem, like those guys, they do have that asterisk on all of their careers because of that. And I think, with the way the sport's evolved and you see heavyweights now, you have John Jones, obviously, who's like, in a different tier himself, even outside of like, just outside of heavyweight before he did lightweight. And then you have guys like Tom Aspinall, Stipe Miocic, coming in there, DC, similar skill set, NCAA wrestling champs, shit like that, Olympic champs. I think the one thing that would loom over Brock Lesnar's career had he started is the steroids. I think if we were sitting here today talking about is Brock Lesnar like the greatest heavyweight of all time or one or top one or two, I think the argument would be between most people is yeah, I mean, like the skill was there, but the dude was also just roided. The dude was just on roids for his entire career. So, like, how much does that play into a factor? Especially looking at how much the sport's evolved since then, to how much more steroids play a factor in your success back then when the sport wasn't as evolved as it is now. And how you don't have all these guys that are good everywhere. You had guys back then that were only really good in one or maybe two areas, but you could get away with it. Not even with steroids, but if you were on steroids, even bigger advantage to your ball, in your ball court. And that's just my take on it.
I think you made a good point there, Ryan. It just made me think about how dominant Brock Lesnar probably would have been when he talked about how back in the day guys were just dominant in one area.
Exactly.
So if Brock Lesnar, being as big and strong as he is as an NCAA wrestling champ, if he had 8 more years to train and really sharpen up his striking tools, I mean, for someone back then to be able to strike with that wrestling pedigree, maybe he'd be better than I probably would have just said, to be honest.
Yeah. I'll just hit on it real quick. I agree. I think, you give anybody, it's like the argument, oh, what if, back then Wilt Chamberlain or Michael Jordan had the ability to train like in the NBA in the way they are practicing today, the things they practice 3-point shooting, like how great could they be? But I also think the fact that Brock joined so late and he had probably some CTE from playing football, wrestling background, I think it added to the aura and his ability in the cage at the time. Because like you guys said, like we're talking, Son, you said when you're little watching him be scared, like his opponents were probably scared of him too. And I think you can introduce that elite, whatever it is back then, whatever that camp would be like earlier. But then it's like, does he fight the same? Is he taught to fight a different way because they're thinking, oh, we want you to have a long career. We want you to not. He got in at 30. He was guns a-blazing the second he got in. I mean, his third UFC fight was for a belt. So I think that adds to like his style, which did make him great. And then also like the other argument, like what is that elite camp? Like we think about the elite camps today, like Cain Velasquez kind of is the pioneer, AKA like what level are we talking about? So I think, it's a hard game to play with the what ifs. I definitely think you give any guy with that skill set, that size, that punching power, and the wrestling background, he's gonna dominate, especially, a thin heavyweight division at that point in time. But I also, I pose the question, like, does he change who he was in the UFC because he's been trained up a different way? Maybe he's a heavy wrestling guy, never really learns, they say go in your wrestling, you're a D1 champion. So it's hard to play that game, but I definitely think if you give anyone elite training, they're going to be better than they were.
Luke, I like that point you made. Like, what is an elite camp back then? Because you have guys like Chael Sonnen who have talked about what their camps were like, and they kind of made their own practices and try to figure out what the best way to go about things was. So there wasn't like it was laid out like it is nowadays on how you go about your procedure and whatnot. Back then, it was kind of a shit show, and MMA was brand new. So how developed of a camp really was there, and what would that elite really have been like? I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, you look nowadays, like the game's evolved so quick in the last few years. I mean, you see Tim Walsh is a notable name. You see Khabib's dad, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. Those are elite names that are coming up. I don't know why. Pablo Sucupira from the Fighting Nerds. Shout out, by the way. That's an elite camp. You see America Top Team, aka, we're mentioning these names, but this is all stuff that kind of, showed up now because there was one or two. Yeah, and that's because there was one or two fighters from that Brock Lesnar era that got built up and just said, hey, fuck it, I'm gonna make an elite camp and I'm gonna make it a legit thing. Because really back then the problem was finding good camps. It was, I want to say, people are a lot more reliant on their one skill that they're really good at rather than being an MMA fighter. It's like, oh no, this guy has kickboxing background, I'll start over him. We just put a kickboxer in a cage and let people try and grapple with him. Like that's pretty much what it was back then. The aura played a very big part of it too. You get scary guys, and back then it's just like, I mean, like we see the Giants get taken down nowadays. But back then it was like, oh, this guy's the reigning defending champ. He's the best of all time. I don't know how many knockouts. That played a huge factor in how those fights went and what you avoided. So, you wouldn't maybe attack those strengths as you do today in this day and age. So, yeah, very good point on the, elite camps that, what even would that have been? Would he have just found himself training with one of those elite fighters at the time? Maybe that's what it would have been back then. But yeah, it's changed so much. It's so tough to, kind of compare it to how it is today. It's just, it's not even the same fight game anymore.
Yeah, it makes you think, like, how good would some of those greats have been if they fought in modern day? This is something I know we were somewhat touching on a bit. I forget if it was like before the podcast. I might have been talking to Luke, but what would GSP have been? I mean, I know GSP was more so modern, but if he fought and started his career right now, given the tools that these modern day guys have. So, like, people always pose the question, what would that guy have done in this era? And it's a bit of a ridiculous question because you're taking a guy who doesn't have all the tools and whatnot that you have nowadays and comparing it to a modern day fighter. But imagine some of those old guys, if they did have those tools that we do have now, like it.
Yeah,
a problem.
I mean, it's almost like asking what would LeBron have done in the '60s.
Yeah, dumb question.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really compare the two, just because, like you said, as sports go on, they evolve, the competition gets better. You have more resources going to said sports, so you see better athletes, better performances. Everything's geared towards it. And that's just the cycle of sports, and that's just the life cycle of like any sport.
Yeah,
you see it now across like everything.
Even the steroid use has improved. I mean, goddamn, like everything from back then has improved. I mean, you see guys like Gordon Ryan and Craig Jones; they're completely different builds, and their steroid use is completely different than, let's say, a Brock Lesnar. So it's hard to compare, but yeah, without a doubt, he would have been better. It's just how good is the field? What does he do differently? You never know.
Yeah, I can't help myself but think about, like the Barry Bonds era of baseball, when it's like you almost like, oh, you take steroids away from Barry Bonds, like what would he have been? Well, at that era, you needed to be on steroids to even compete because everybody was on it. Either you're on steroids or you're on the bench. It's almost like the argument almost gets canceled out because everybody else around him was on, was using, PEDs at the same time. So I'd say it's almost, equal, other than these guys putting a lot more power behind those punches. But I think the results probably would have been pretty similar had those steroids been taken away earlier.
Yeah, like you said, son, all I have to do is look at Brock Lesnar's daughter, the genetics are there, but you really don't need steroids to be that big. Shout out Maya.
He didn't even need them.
She just won her 4th conference title, ranked number 1, going for, I think, her 2nd NCAA title, maybe her 3rd.
Tip my cap to Brock Lesnar's daughter. Congratulations.
Yeah, and tip a cap to his genetics as well. Holy shit, she looks just like him, dude. The mom's genes didn't even try.
Oh, well, that's all I got for today. I don't know if you guys have anything else, but
I just want to say, I mean, we took a good bit of time answering, one of our listeners, questions. So whether it be YouTube, whether it be on Instagram DMs, leave a comment down. Let us know, any questions you'd like us to answer, any concerns, any statements, anything, you'd like us to put out there. But ask us stuff. We'll try our best to answer it. But that's all I got.
100%. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's always a pleasure talking some fights with you boys.
Absolutely.
See ya.